As we're going over our first 2019 NBA mock draft, we felt it was worthy with Duke playing yesterday and RJ Barrett and Zion Williamson looking so good. So without further ado, let's get into the first pick of our first ever 2019 NBA mock draft. And at number 1 overall, it's RJ Barrett, the number 1 prospect out of high school this year, the Canadian who, I want to make something very clear to a lot of our NBA draft fans out there. RJ Barrett is who we thought Andrew Wiggins was. RJ Barrett is that guy. Good shooter, excellent athlete, an extremely versatile player. I think his shot needs to be a little bit more consistent, but he has NBA range, and this dude can really do it all on the basketball court. He can defend, he can pass, he's a great playmaker as well. He can work around the pick and roll too. RJ Barrett is the elite prospect in this year's class. He's the number 1 guy. He's my number 1 player in this year's class as well. Great player, and if you saw him play yesterday for Duke, he is the total package. He absolutely dominated yesterday. I know they were playing Ryerson or some other joke of a school, but RJ Barrett is the real deal. And I think as you watch more of him and the rest of this Duke team, he's really going to be a special, special player in college this year. Remember, I said it before, I'll say it again. Who you thought Andrew Wiggins was, that's who RJ Barrett actually is. So watch out for him this year playing for that Super Duke team. Speaking of the Super Duke team, we didn't get to see him play yesterday. He's dealing with a little bit of a groin injury. But at number 2 overall, we have Cameron Reddish, another guard/forward out of Duke. The best two-way player in the class for me. Outstanding defensive player, can defend 3 different positions right now. I think that if Duke uses him correctly, he might get a little bit of training defending the quicker point guards that we have out there as well. The shooting isn't quite there yet, but he's such a good finisher around the rim that I don't think it's that big of an issue. I think the shooting will come around. Not a ton of guys coming out of college have elite jump shots. It's just not a very common thing nowadays, but I think that Cameron Reddish is a complete package player. I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do on the offensive side of the ball. He's a sick athlete, but one thing you guys need to know about him, he plays a small forward position, but he's more of a primary creator and a playmaker rather than a scorer. He loves to create on the offensive side of the ball. He loves being the point man in the pick and roll. So watch out for Cameron Reddish at Duke this year. I think he's going to combo for some fantastic plays with Zion Williamson, who obviously will also be in our top 10 in a little bit. But watch out for Cameron Reddish. He didn't play yesterday, but he's going to be one of the more exciting players in college this year. Let's go to number 3. This is the best shooter in college, or at least the best freshman shooter that's going to be in college basketball this year, and that's Romeo Langford. Romeo Langford, I got a buddy who lives in Indiana. I met him in sports broadcasting camp a couple years ago. Yes, I went to sports broadcasting camp as a kid growing up. He said that Romeo Langford is the best shooting high schooler that he has ever seen. And it also needs to be pointed out, kids who play in the state of Indiana as high schoolers and stay in state and go to the University of Indiana, that is a lot of pressure to put on yourself. That is a ton of pressure that not a lot of college kids take. A lot of kids that come from Indiana go away from the school because it's just that much pressure. But Romeo Langford has taken that pressure and has honestly made Indiana a relevant basketball team going into this season. He's a great athlete. He's an outstanding jump shooter. His three-point shooting needs to be a little bit more consistent, but his mid-range game is absolutely there. He's a great finisher around the rim too. He can create his shot from almost any single level. I want to see his defense take another step, and I want to see his three-point shooting take another step. But he looks like a guy to me who has a ton of potential with his jump shot and simply needs a little bit of premier college coaching, which he should get at Indiana. So Romeo Langford as the number 3 pick in our first 2019 mock draft. Let's go to number 4. Look, the hype train for this guy is as high as any high school player going into college that we have had in maybe the past decade. Zion Williamson coming in at the number 4 player in our 2019 NBA mock draft. I am a believer in Zion Williamson. I really am. The dude is so powerful and so explosive. His skill set is so unique for a guy of his size. He would be the second heaviest player in the entire NBA right now. The dude is 6'7", 280. He weighs more than Joel Embiid does right now at 7'1". And it's not that he's fat. He's just so muscular, and his body can hold so much muscle on that frame that he's just bigger than everyone else on the court. And if you watched him yesterday during Duke's basketball game, he was incredible. He was fantastic. The dunking was there. The rebounding was there. His jump shot already looks so much better than it did in high school. Look what happens when you actually get some high-quality college coaching. I think him going to Duke was the best possible decision that he could have made for his NBA future. I am an absolute believer in Zion Williamson. Do you know who he actually reminds me of? Because, and I'll point this out, and I think it's lazy. A lot of times when people in NBA draft media come up with player comps, they do it by skin color. Like every white guy that comes out of the draft gets compared to a white guy. Like this happens every single year. Zion Williamson, to me, he is about 3 inches shorter. He reminds me a lot of Blake Griffin coming out of college. He really does. The explosiveness, the dunking, the playmaking ability. He's also a much better passer than I think people give him credit for. Blake Griffin coming out of Oklahoma didn't have a great jump shot, but he was a much better playmaker than I think he developed in the NBA. And I think Zion Williamson is going to be a great player. Not to mention, I haven't even talked about this, his defense is off the charts. The Duke can defend up to 3 positions. So Zion Williamson for me coming in at number 4. Let's go to number 5. It's Nassir Little out of UNC. Now, Little is a ton of talent. I mean, Little has a lot of talent. I don't want to confuse you guys. His athleticism, his length, and his defense are all elite. Crazy elite player, ton of length, has a standing reach of almost 9 feet at his height of about 6'8". Now, that's wild if you're looking for a guy with that kind of length and athleticism. He reminds me a lot of Michael Kidd-Gilchrist coming out a couple of years ago. His shooting is not consistent enough. His offensive game is not consistent enough at all. But again, to me, he looks like a player that needs a year of college coaching. And if you're wondering why I keep bringing that up, I think we overstate the amount of guys in every single year's class that could instantly jump to the NBA. The only guy this year, in my mind, who can make a jump right to the NBA at a high school would be Barrett. And I still think that's a little bit of a stretch. I think him going to Duke for a year is going to be fantastic. But I think Little, he needs a year of college development before the NBA. Him going to UNC is a great decision for his NBA development. I think he's still a top 5 player. I think he's explosive enough around the rim to make up for his poor shooting. But overall, I think he's going to be a guy to watch this year. Let's go to our next player at number 6. It's Sekou Doumbouya. Now, I'm probably saying his name terribly. He's the number 1 international prospect this year out of France. And he is unbelievably raw, very raw. 6'9" guy coming in weighing at about 230 at his age. He was playing in the France Pro League at 16 years old. And he really does have all the tools. Shooting, ball handling, defense. His athleticism is off the charts. He simply needs consistency and better coaching. The dude needs elite level coaching. He is a project. He is probably the top project player in this year's class. There's not a lot of similar players to his overall skill set that we have today. His ball handling and his size is absolutely off the charts, and there's a reason why he's the number 1 international player in this year's class. Personally, I need to watch more of him before I put him in the top 5. I've seen him going as high as number 3 overall in mock drafts. I don't personally believe in that, but overall, I think he's going to be a top 10 pick in this year's class. Let's go to number 7, and it's Naz Reid. Nassir Reid, his full name, Naz Reid, and his short name is Naz, so I'll call him Naz. He is maybe the most talented overall player in this year's class. He is 6'10", he is 250, he can ball handle like a point guard. He's a good shooter. His playmaking at the power forward position is off the charts. There's only one problem. He doesn't try at all. His consistency and his effort levels are maybe the worst out of any elite prospect in this year's class. Though that simply could be because he's just so much better than anyone else on a high school court that he just doesn't have to try. You know who that sounds very similar to? Sounds a lot like Ben Simmons when he first was going off to LSU. There are all these questions about his effort and his motor. A lot of the times with these effort and motor consistency guys, they just stop trying during their senior year of college because they already know they're going D1. They're already a 5-star prospect, and they just dominate everyone on the court. I think him going to LSU would be very good for him. I think that SEC talent is going to bring the most out of him. I think the effort and consistency issues are something that needs to be noted. But if you can get the full 100% effort out of this guy, he might be the most talented player in this year's class. But that mental side of the game is a big question mark for him right now. Let's go to number 8. It's Quentin Grimes, the kid out of Kansas this year. Top player out of Kansas, the number 1 prospect that they have coming in this year. An excellent shooter, fits very well into the modern-day combo guard position. Smooth athlete, fantastic passer. I think he needs to learn how to command an offense a little bit better. Again, like I said with Naz Reid, he's a high schooler, so all he really has to do is just be more talented than everyone else on the court. That's not going to fly at Kansas. It's not. He's going to have to be that primary playmaker for that team. He's probably the most talented player that they have next year. So if they want to make it to the Final Four, the Elite Eight again in the tournament, Quentin Grimes is going to have to be their primary playmaker, and I think he certainly has that potential. Let's go to number 9, probably the biggest question mark of any college player in this year's class, and that's Bol Bol. That's Manute Bol's son, who's been, he's going to Oregon. He chose him over UCLA and a bunch of other schools. I have no idea what to make out of this guy. I really don't. His potential is absolutely off the charts. His athleticism for a guy of his size is wild, but he can't shoot. His motor is a massive question mark. Someone needs to kick this dude in the ass. And I'm worried that he's a little bit too skinny. I really am. He is a stick figure. And not a stick figure like his father, Manute Bol, who simply wasn't able to put muscle on him because he was so long. Bol Bol he looks like a stick figure. He looks like Slender Man running up and down the court. You just give him a couple more arms and you could put this dude in a horror film. I'm serious. He's a scary looking dude. I think Oregon is a good spot for him. They're going to have a really good team this year. They have 2 top 20 overall prospects coming into the team this year. So watch out for Bol Bol. He's going to block a lot of shots, but I'm still a little bit skeptical over his offensive skill set heading into the NBA. He's different than Mo Bamba. They are not the same player at all. Mo Bamba is a better offensive player going to Texas than Bol Bol was. Let's go to my number 10 overall player. The only player on this list, well, besides our international player, the only guy on this list who isn't an incoming freshman, and that's Daniel Gafford, the center out of Arkansas. Could have come out last year, chose not to, wanted to stay in Fayetteville in Arkansas to play another year with the Razorbacks. Good athlete, ton of upside. He's kind of inconsistent at times, though I'm going to kind of put that on him being a freshman last year, but he's a safe prospect. He really is. The dude can rebound, he can defend, he can finish around the bucket. Similar player to a Wendell Carter Jr., not as good as Wendell Carter Jr. was coming out, but that same mold of a player, that same kind of, thick dude down low who can do a little bit of everything, but not necessarily an elite player at any level. I think Wendell Carter Jr. had the elite defensive traits, but overall, Daniel Gafford, I think, is a very safe pick, and I think he'll end up going number 10 overall. It's Fayetteville, excuse me. They have like a bunch of Y's and T's and E's that don't actually get pronounced. Fayetteville, Arkansas is where he returned to play another season with the Razorbacks.